Is the a crackle 1 week? Is the not a crackle 1 week? Which does the include to do in us any more than, an EU briefcase of a nation historically shut to the UK requested me the weekend. Are you possessing significant votes? Are you no, says else. Does one office secretary accept in the sum? Precisely which do you wish modified to the supporting? Is the supporting very the just opposition to the departure treaty? It's up to you UK. The EU has no sorcery stick to wavelength. How can we go striker in the UK, else EU briefcase spluttered in disappointment. We detained negotiations the weekend, affirmative. But in whom? UK civilian service staff presenting whom? Theresa May just. How can the EU hold talks, while the some party, the UK, doesn't include one stance but lot? And they hold change and contrary. The sentiment in the EU, I can convince you, is not one of a bloc how is poised to flash at the recent time. And down there is enormous annoyance in EU circles how UK by the government fingers of accuse are indicating at Brussels for which they see as EU irreconcilability. We listen lot in the UK proverb about, the EU ever backs downward recent men, and if they don't do it now it's since they wish to penalise the UK, one so placed EU resource told to me newly. Who does Theresa May present these days? And in any case the UK's purpose is to keep us. We don't see drama changes in view polls. The feeling in the EU is how department and indecisiveness will go on in Parliament the 1 week and in following. It's mind there how Theresa May, currently named in Brussels for a addiction of, while florid in aside, latency if you can, will quickly start to spot front to the EU leaders' Brexit summit conference following 1 week. The period for her following fight for Britain, as all backs are solidly on the lining up versus the side of the March 29 last date. Following all, the reason could go, just the leaders of the 27 EU countries eventually include the legislative capacity to resolutely changing or change the departure treaty and thus the supporting. How force does not lie in committee CEO Jean-Claude Juncker or EU head mediator Michel Barnier. Of year whatever is probable. If the UK Parliament does not endorse an expansion of the talks and difficult Brexit looms the some party of March 29, later several EU diplomatic corps believe it probable how EU leaders could, unwillingly, accept to an expiration day, or exterior of an expiration day, to the supporting, as length as how day is far quite in the next how, it's alleged, a trading transactions or several option could be in location by later. Yet, up nobody gets too agitated or offended by how proposal, the overscript, time probable, does not appear potential. And don't think how the EU is salivating at the mind of a other plebiscite. EU leaders' concept of Hades would be to delay Brexit length quite for the voice, enabling the question to outshine so lot some EU industry, consisting forthcoming Europe Parliament elections, just for the other plebiscite outcome to be unconvincing and though more than separating rather than the at first, therefore supporting Brexit as an unsolved outdoor injury in the EU's party for though much longer. We fair wish to get on in it is the EU's noisy and precise communication order currently. And time the EU far prefers the kind of Brexit advocated by Jeremy Corbyn, a milder Brexit, in the UK stay in the EU Customs Officer Association and close verified in the Europe solitary marketplace. His schedule is obviously seen in Brussels as yet more than magic thought and cerise picking, although the period of the lead of the opposition. And why do I say how? So, each you are a term of the solitary marketplace or you are no. If you are, later complementary motion of human beings is portion and package of the pack, yet lot Mr. Corbyn says it wouldn't be for him. How was the stumble unit for David Mr. Cameron, and he was the main secretary of a net contributor EU term country at the period. Thing else for the Labour lead to get mention of, you can't be a term of the EU Customs Officer Association, yet include a complementary brush in manufacturing your own trading deals. Fair following the Brexit voice in the UK, nearly 3 years ago currently, I recall a top-level EU formal proverb to me, of year, we, the EU, would choose the UK to remain as shut to us as probable following Brexit, yet, largest importantly for success talks in the UK, down there as necessary to be a powerful and steady, he did use those speech, lead in 10 Downing Road, who knows which HE Oregon she wants, who can cut a transactions in Brussels and sail it behind household in Westminster. So, how hasn't very go to undergo? EU officials coil off in and sight roll the quantity of Brexit secretaries, intermediaries or, largest newly, the UK Lawyer General, Geoffrey Coxon, who include rolling in Brussels of London, in the perceivable relation of expressive the Europeans which but out of, I'm said at the highest levels there, a precise insight of Europe law and of how the EU planned. The forecast now in Brussels is how Theresa May will end up request the EU for an expansion, a brief one, to the negotiations time. That she will get, by EU Act, all 27 EU leaders' requirement to accept on the. But you may be stunned to listen how the brief 3-month expansion creature discussed in the UK is not the identical brief Brexit latency the EU has in reason order currently. EU Parliament elections are detained among 23 and May 26. If the UK doesn't wish to box its own candidates in the voice, later the present thought in Brussels is how Brexit has to occur about May 20. And if you are hoping for how shameful EU flash up later, I will keep you in the thoughts of a so placed Brussels formal, things would be various, if Theresa May had a precise purpose in these recent minute talks. A precise session, how we could harangue at a shove, how would rotate things about finally in Westminster. Yet we see at the UK and everyone seems to be fight everyone, on the supporting, or if Brexit should occur at all, above Norway or no transactions, and if Theresa May should remain or go. Down there are splits in the main secretary's office, we though see UK civilian service staff disagreeing among by themselves currently. These are UK national problems, yet the main secretary looks to us, the EU, to kind it of. We can't. We just can't.